This video is about my first attempt to dye my own warp yarn, which was definitely not as easy as I thought it was going to be. Okay, so I have soaked my yarn in some soda ash, and now I'm going to add some ice to it. Here is the ice, and I'm going to spoon over the dye. I'll show you what it looks like. So here are the dyes I'm going to be using. So I've got rust orange, olive green, I've got yellow, and I've got black, which is called Raven. And the yellow is, well, it's got to be 20 years old. So fingers crossed it works okay. So that is the rust orange put on. Then I've added the olive green, which looks similar, but comes out very differently. Okay, and now I've added the yellow, and then onto the black. Okay, I've added the black, which is called Raven. And what I'm going to do is, because I soaked the yarn in soda ash, but it came out really, well, the water came out really brown, so, I mean, I'm hoping it was soda ash. It was the solution in a bottle that I put on top of the cupboard. So just in case, I'm going to spoon on a bit of soda ash, and hopefully that will make sure that it binds properly. Okay, so that's it with the soda ash on. Now you'll notice that I'm dyeing it in the muck, so I'm not putting it on a rack. So you can see I've got a wire rack there. So sometimes what I do when I'm dyeing is I will leave some, well, I've done it with fabric, I've never done it with yarn, but I'll leave some folded up fabric in the base of this container, and then I'll put the wire racks over the top and lay, you know, something else that I'm dyeing, and then let the dye drip through, which I probably will do again, but I thought I'd just test this, dyeing it in the muck, just on its own, see what happens, and then take it from there. So I'm going to leave this now for, I don't know, a few hours, come back and check it. I've got a little bit more ice, not loads, but if it needs a bit of a top up, I can do that. Okay, so this is it after about 2 hours. So you can see the muck, as it's called, is increasing. So I'm really hoping it doesn't end up, you know, completely black, and that you can actually see some colours. What I'm hoping is that the dark area, the dark sort of extra liquid, will colour the sort of underneath, and that you'll be able to see some of the bright colours and then some of the dark underneath. Okay, that beeping is my dinner, so I better go. But yeah, I will see again how it is in a bit. Okay, so it looks like most of the ice is melted. There's a few little bits in the bottom there. So it'll be interesting to see, I mean, it's still got until 4 PM tomorrow. Be interesting to see what it looks like. Hopefully it's not all just going to be completely black by then. But we will see. I'm determined to try and be patient with this one, because normally I give up and rinse it too soon, but I'm going to try and leave it for the full 24 hours. Okay, so it is 24 hours later, and I'm ready to take it out. It really doesn't look very different to when I filmed it last time, so I'm quite surprised it's not changed much since then. Not sure what it's going to be like once I've squeezed it out and rinsed it. The other thing to say is normally I wouldn't waste this much dye. After 24 hours, I don't think it's as effective. Well, that's not easy to say. I don't think it's as effective after 24 hours. But just to say, I wouldn't normally waste this much dye, and I definitely am going to try and avoid it again, because it's such a shame. So I've got a plan for what I'm going to try next that will use the dye better. Okay, so let's take it out. I'll try and do the yellow, orange first. I will try and give it a good rinse. Okay, I wasn't sure about this warp, but I've laid it out kind of how it might be on the loom as a warp. And actually, I think I really like it. I mean, it's not dry yet, so it's probably going to be quite different when it's dry. But yeah, it's quite cool. I'll maybe show you some close-ups when it's dry so you can see all the colours. Okay, so this is the yarn now it's dried. And I think there's some really nice sort of sections to it. I'm you know, much more pleased now with the sort of black areas, that they're actually not just completely black, and you know, there's lots of sort of variation in the colour. So quite excited to get it on the loom and see what it looks like as a warp. So once the yarn was dry, I spent absolutely hours untangling it and winding it onto a ball, and I mean hours. Then I have stretched it out to create a warp with it. It didn't really turn out as I wanted. This was sort of the second attempt, because I did wind it onto the, or stretch it out as a warp, and then decided that it wasn't looking like I wanted. So I laid it out on the floor to try and get the kind of repeat in the colours, but it still didn't really work when I was winding it as a warp. So I decided I'm just going to leave it as is, see what it looks like when I've woven it, and then maybe look at my ICAT book and see if it gives any instructions as to how to get the colours to line up, because I thought if the skein was 1 yard that it would just be 2 yards stretching out, so it was sort of double, but that didn't really work, so I might have to go back to the drawing board with that one. So in the next video in this series, I'm going to be trying a different option where I dye on top of a grate, so the ice or the water from the ice all drips through, so it's not dyeing in the muck. But then I'm going to try some stuff that's just in the muck and not had any of the ice on itself, just as a comparison really, to see what kind of method of creating warps I like best. And I'm also going to be doing a video on using the warp, or warps. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it in one video or in two, but stay tuned for that.